Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Dimitris Plantzos, and it is my great pleasure to be chairing this morning the first session of this very important conference in honor of Alexandria's auspicious Archaeological Society. And I'm grateful to the organizers of the conference for the invitation to chair this session. It is a great privilege, I would say, to have three major centers of learning on Alexandrian art and archaeology, the Archaeological Society of Alexandria, the Biblioteca Alexandrina, and the Centre des Études Alexandrines, coming together with the valuable assistance of the A.G. Lefentis Foundation to organize this conference, and I'm very happy and honored to be here. So, I would like to first invite to the podium Professor Mona Haggag and Professor Hussein Abdelaziz, both from University of Alexandria, great friends and esteemed colleagues. And Professor Haggag will give us her presentation on recent project for the preservation, conservation, and site management of Shadby Cemetery Field Insight.
I hope you will be patient enough to listen to me once again. I'll try to be very short, but we spoke about the project earlier and about the sponsorship of Lefentis, and we said it was a long-term project that was agreed upon, but we chose Shadby. If we ask ourselves, why Shadby? Why we chose, our choice was Shadby first. It's very clear. Shadby is the earliest, Shadby is the most important, and Shadby is the most deteriorated, which needs very fast and very quick intervention. Being the earliest archaeological site to be found in Alexandria is something that it has in itself its indication, because it gives us a first clue about the city's area at the time of its founding, the capital of Egypt, Alexandria, how large it was, at least on the eastern borders and the eastern walls, because it lies beyond the walls only 200 meters east of them. Alexandria, as you know, had two large cemeteries, one to the west, which is a vast area devoted completely to burial, and it's a hard and strong part in the ridge of Alexandria, and the eastern cemetery, which is lesser in strength, and it differs from the western necropolis, and the necropolis was huge enough that led Strabo to call it the city of the dead, necropolis, a term which goes for all ancient cemeteries up till now. Well, the eastern was different, because when there was gradual need to enlarge the city area, they just stopped using one cemetery and turn into another place further to the east. So the Eastern Cemetery is not one entity, but it's always interrupted with domestic areas. Being the earliest means that it accommodated the corpses of the people who resided in the city at the beginning of its founding, at the first year of its existence. Those who came with either with the Alexander the Great or with Ptolemy the First, either in the army or in their civil entourage. They were the elites of Alexandria at that time, either Macedonians or Greeks from different parts of the Greek world. They occupied the most important jobs in the Ptolemaic court and administration, government administration. So surely they wanted to distinguish themselves and indicate their identity and their origins. Hypogeum A is the earliest part of Shahdt's cemetery, and also it is the most important constituent of Shahdt's cemetery. It is a complex of subterranean chambers hewn in the natural rock, and the photos you are seeing now are the photos of the Hypogeum A as at the time we entered it. To have an idea about how severely deteriorated at the time when we arrived in 2019 and 2020, the photo to your right is the time of discovery. This screen wall was like that. In the early 60s, the screen wall is that. When we went, there is no screen wall. So it was about to perish. Our objectives for the site were the restoration and protection of all ancient remains, the consolidation of the archaeological investigation in the site, the upgrade of visitors' experience in the site, including the construction of a visitors' center and cafeteria, the renovation of all modern structures. Our beginning was in the morning of the 1st of August, 2021. And this photo, we thought that we are going to make some kind of systematic grid system excavations, and we made our grid, and we began very systematically, but in the afternoon of the same very day, this was the case. You see here, the tomb, the water immersed, the same very day, first day. And in 2 or 3 days, the site became fully inundated, and we had to resort to using temporary pumps in order to continue. Although it was damp, debris, and water, we tried as much as we could to excavate or to clean in layers, 20 centimeters each. Because during our cleaning, sometimes we come upon some solid remains, which we usually took dry and investigate. Part of these, or some of these solid remains, were very important, although very modest, but they were very important to us, like this one and sole piece of stucco fresco painting, which is painted in 2 layers. This was the first sign to appear for us from our work to indicate stages and phases for Shahdt, even within the Ptolemaic period. And in the North Passage leads to Room C, as Breccia called it, here. In this particular spot, do you see the pointer, the arrow? I don't see it from here. Well, in any case. Excuse me? Ah, you see it. Good. Okay. Near this room C, the passage, the northern passage, we found something at a depth of 60 centimeters. A group of human molars and premolars collected and grouped together deliberately and buried in this particular spot. The reason for their being there and the way they have no connection with any skeletal remains in this particular place. So why are they there? Asma Abdullah today will come to you and speak about it. We decided to remove all the additions that are violating the antique site, and the most conspicuous feature that was violating the main courtyard of Hypogeum A was the modern staircase, which were built maybe in the 50s or 60s, nobody knows. But they were really violating the courtyard. And it was also a matter of safety, because the wall supporting these staircase was very, very haphazardly constructed. Small pieces of stones, polygonal, carrying huge architectural blocks, huge and very heavy architectural blocks. And it was about to collapse. And if we left it to collapse, it would have been also destroy a feature and an important part of Hypogeum, original part of Hypogeum A. And you can't imagine how lucky we were, because we decided to dismantle these stairs. Because under these stairs, we found many information. We found architectural blocks that are worked out, and they are tenderly taken care of in order to fit for a certain construction, a kind of architectural huge construction, probably an entablature architecture frieze, and it was just put under the stairs, like what you see. So this is also the first indication that Shadbi Hypogeum was not only hewn in the rock, but the ancient architects tried to add some constructions for some reason or another. Under the stairs, we found also some stele, tomb stele of the Greek style, which are imitating the temple facade, and which are found elsewhere on the surface of the site. So these were just neglected under the stair. We found some locally closing slabs with a very traditional color painting imitating false doors and false windows. And they were just neglected there. One piece of what we have found of locally closing slab is a fragment of one which maintained its color very brightly, as you see here, and this fits here in one loculus closing slab in room, what we called Philotechnus room, and it was room E in Breccia's plan. Under the stairs comes the south wall of the open court of Shadbi. Before that, we didn't know so much about the south wall. It was only hashering on the plan of Breccia. But we came upon this wall, which is very important, and also an entrance in the central, between the central two columns in this wall. By finding this southern wall, we have a complete courtyard with its 4 walls and with 3 walls decorated with the architectural imitation of a peristyle. So it is a pseudo-peristyle. If our dating for Shadbi Cemetery as the earliest in Alexandria, late 4th, early 3rd, then this pseudo-peristyle is the earliest ever in funerary complexes. Usually, pseudo-peristyles and peristyles are characteristic for domestic architecture. They were not used in funerary architecture either in Macedon or in Greek, as far as I know. But having this here in Alexandria, in Shadbi, that means that this is the earliest one to be found in a funerary complex. The entrance which we found is higher in level than the original floor of the court. It can be inferred from this that it is a later stage entrance because they try to put steps in order to reach the entrance itself. From the south side, the ancient users of the entrance supported its jambs here with two huge flat blocks horizontal to raise the level between these two blocks with another block that once belonged to an elaborate Doric frieze here. This block between the two jambs risen the level between the two horizontal blocks in the south. But this block is in the shape of a Doric frieze. It is taken from a Doric frieze. And together with the huge blocks uncovered after the demolition of the modern stairs, the Doric frieze block seemed to have been part of an exquisite constructed entablature or facade that once stood in the complex. The dimensions and modest composition of the uncovered entrance do not fit for such a huge-sized entablature or construction. As for the Doric frieze, between the jambs the Doric frieze is put upside down, something which a Greek architect never do it. So it seems to be a later stage of use for the complex, maybe third stage, nobody knows. It needs further study. On the other hand, it is obvious that the intercolumnation between the two middle semi-columns of the south wall is wider than the other spaces, slightly wider, which is a clear indication that a certain entrance was located there in the original plan of the complex. So there was an entrance, but when? And was it really original, contemporaneous with the creation of the complex itself or not? Nobody can say now. Then a new plan for Hypogeum A emerged. And this new plan corrects some parts of Breccia's one. It seems that Breccia's plan was partially hypothetical because he couldn't, the resources he had, not like ours now, and he couldn't work in water at that time, so he didn't complete and he didn't reach the original floor of the complex. This is why it was important for us to reach this original floor. For example, Breccia did not put any locally in this room, while Schmidt and Drommel, who came to the site and worked in it during the beginning of the second decade of the 20th century from the University of Augsburg, and they put this plan, which is more accurate as far as they reached of information. Talking to Schmidt, taking his opinion in demolishing the stairs, and I told him, well, Breccia put the entrance to the north. He said, but he did not provide any evidence for that. If you want to put it to the north or to the south, then you must reach the original floor. And he was correct. And he was correct that they were very skeptic to put any entrance in the composition anywhere, as they did not have any evidence about that. The open court in Alexandrian funerary complexes is a place for the living. We have evidence more than one, about the practice of funerary rituals, commemorization the dead, introducing things on the honor of their dead, preparing meals, the Totenmahl, preparing votives and burning incenses, for example. All these are made by the living people. So there must be a place for the living people. The major difference between Greek Macedonian tombs and those in Alexandria is that Greek Macedonian were made to be blocked. But in Alexandria, they were made to remain open and to people to visit in occasions. So it is a place of the living where the funerary rituals are practiced. There should be a water source for the people who use the tomb. And Chadbi was the only exception in Alexandrian tombs that all people who studied them said Chadbi doesn't have a water source, and we found it exactly like other Alexandrian tombs. In the auli, or the open court, at the sides of the southwestern room, at less than 1 meter deep, fragments of 2 medium-sized amphorae of local cores were found containing bones which seem to be of animals. These are the reminiscents of the Totenmahl or the funerary meals. Under the stairs, again, we found this miniature altar, which has inscription dedicating it to the noble spirit of Euterpe. If we have put into consideration the gamma-shaped clinae, which is typical Macedonian, and the cutting of the 2 semi-columns from the exterior and from the interior, as here, in one block, which is typical Macedonian feature, then the Macedonian inspiration and influence is very clear, in addition to the architectural decorative motifs, especially the columns, the pediment, the windows and doors. So, Macedonian influence. But in spite of the early date of the Eastern burial unit, and in spite of the direct Macedonian influence, the Cluny room does not lack some features that, to our knowledge, not known elsewhere. The Cluny, in their facade, the facade of the Cluny had a stele, a Greek stele, looks like a facade of the temple, and this was normally and usually used for monuments on top of burials, not for Cluny. Cluny were like bed, like sofa, and they had bedspreads with their decorations. They had not stele, except here. So it is something to emphasize identity, expressing identity or something like that. And the Cluny, the one which is only half of its facade appears, the carver put half a stele. This is very weird. I haven't seen it elsewhere. And the corner double columns, which is also a very rare, if not existing in Greek architecture, to have 2 columns in the corner. Greeks usually took care of the corner columns, and it is known that the Parthenon, it's the myth of the Parthenon is the corner columns of it, how heavy, how high, how wide, and all this. But here we have 2 columns in the corner, and inside the Eastern burial unit. And somebody thought they are more support for the corner, but their appearance in the courtyard, which did not have any ceiling, excludes this assumption. Was it experimental? Nobody knows. Further investigation are needed. There are other discoveries like Hadra Hidriyai in the Eastern Burial Unit, and خلصنا؟ شكرا. For room H, which was very, room H is this. It was very generous to us because we are the first discoverer of room H. Brescia haven't discovered it. If you notice here, he put it with 5 locally in this wall and 3 here, while Schmidt and Rummel put 4 and 3. That means that Brescia did not see the locally of room C. When Schmidt found it, they found it like that, and when we dug it, we found it like that, 4 and 3. So Brescia saw a piece or an area in the wall which he thought that it is a place of a 5th loculus, which haven't been done ever. It was generous to us that it gave us nearly 80 or 90% of what we found, more than 300 pieces of artifacts.
We're running out of time, I'm sorry.
I'm out of time.
Well, we are
I'm finishing.
Almost, yes.
I am finishing. Room H, this is room C. Room H, I call it the room of skeletons because we found a lot of bones and skeletons in room H. And then we found a complete intact skeleton in one of the loculis, and in preparation for displaying it in its place, in situ, we were surprised to find it a second use, and it is on a shelf, and under the shelf there is a reduction pit in which another complete skeleton of a lady again was there. So it is the room of skeletons, really. The north passage of, we found in room C also Hadra Hidriyai, intact Hadra Hidriyai, together with the burned bones inside. And these are the skeletons of room H. This is the lower skeleton. And here are the pedestals of the north passage. Nobody knows for what function were they. You know, these are dug in the rock. Both are dug in the rock. And there is a third one attached to the wall. So they are not only freestanding to carry something, but the 3 of them are connected together for what? Pedestals for what? Nobody knows. We need a further study. And what is very nice is that this we did not discover, but we found among the scattered stones on the surface, we found this, and Kyriakos, Plansos, everybody, we saw an inscription. The inscription, if we are correct in reading it, says apo tes pandoitiki stadioi ekaton pente conta. Far from pandoitiki, 150 stadia. So it is a distance marker. Distance marker that is late 3rd, early 2nd century BC means that this place was important for people, that they chose it to put the distance marker there. We don't know where is Pandoitiki. Maybe Roger Bagnall will tell us one day. But it is an important place here that everybody passes by it and see the distance markers. Although we are now trying to convince the Alexandria Governorate to make distance markers for Shadbi now. But Madame Shireen was here. Maybe they will do it one day. Last but not least, the hidden loculus. In the Eastern Burial Unit, in the Eastern Burial Unit here. When cleaning this loculus, it seemed shorter than all the others. And one hole, behind it, a hollow area was found. The hole is ancient, from ancient times. And when we try to see what is behind, it is another loculus, complete with its skeleton, its burial. We don't, of course, its entrance are further to the south. Here, from here. But this is the earliest part of the tomb. Then we have some part which is earlier than the earliest. What about it? Nobody can answer this question. We must make further excavation to the south and find out for what was this and what was the original and where was the original entrance and what is about this burial. Many questions, has this hidden loculus stood alone before Hypogeum A was created? As the opening of the hidden loculus was from the south, outside the borders of Hypogeum A, is it still keeps its closing slab? Was there a sort of sporadic burials in the area which was later on used to build a cemetery? Many questions are raised by this discovery, questions whose answers cannot be provided before carrying out a new project for excavating the south area in front of Hypogeum A. We need also another urgent project for Shadbi, which is DNA analysis. We have a huge quantity of bones and skulls, and we need to analyze them in order to know about the origins of the occupants of Shadbi tomb. So the more archaeological material is revealed, the more questions are raised. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Hagag, for this amazing survey of the recent discoveries and breakthroughs at this splendid site. And now I'm very happy to call Kyriakos Savopoulos from the University of Oxford to give us his presentation called Revisiting Hypogeum A in the Hellenistic Cemetery of Shadbi.
Good morning, everybody. Needless to say that I'm very happy to be back home. Everybody knows I used to be in the library. My career has been built upon the library, the foundations of the library. I wouldn't be anything without this occasion and this period of my work in Alexandria. So let me go straight to the lecture because we have limited time. So let's say from now on, after finishing, let's say, the physical intervention in the site, will be to study it, and my main concern will be architecture, the use of space, promotion of identity, display of identities and hierarchies, and how this is reflected or indicated in place like the new for us now, Hypogeum A. So after all this new evidence, I think we need a deep revision, and if someone is aware of the publication of Breccia that happened 110 years ago, I think the revision would start from how we introduce people to Shadbi. So I will go to the other side than the original publication. I would like to introduce you to Shadbi from the courtyard, what we call today auli. You can call it atrium, estrion. There are plenty of terms. We found that term as more appropriate for our case. So our auli seems to be the center of this complex, this multi-chamber complex, around which burial chambers are articulated to the west, north, and east side. And as you have seen during the presentation of Professor Hagag, we have news for the south side, which was originally reported by the excavator of the early 20th century as having remained rough. And now we know, of course, that it was not rough at all. It just, he was unable to consolidate his investigation. We have the remnants, the lower remnants of a wall, fully built wall, carrying decoration, architectural decoration from both sides with sailing columns, as you see. In total, we have 6 of them. In between, in the middle, we have a gateway, and the jumps are still there. But as Professor Hagag said, most probably this specific setting, it's a later one, and I think it combines 2 settings, the second and the third together. So let us see in detail what we can see and how can we identify this wall as the south facade of the whole complex, because this is what I'm going to claim. So as you see, in rough reconstruction on top, any photogrammetry down and lower, below, we deal with a wall built on a base. 3 semi-columns are attached to the lateral walls of the gateway. And you see here clearly that the corner column that has been preserved, only one, we don't have it from the other side, extends beyond the limit of the courtyard. Unlike the other side, is the only spot of the whole wall that does not mirror the other side. And obviously, because it's external element, giving to the wall the appearance of a proper facade. Then, of course, Professor Hagag talked about this Doric frieze block. And of course, it's not in original place. We don't need to explain it further. However, at a point of time, that was placed during, while the tomb is still in use. It was not part of a blocking wall, for example, as we find in Macedon, when they seal the entrance. Because once you enter inside, you see that in front of this block, you have the people placed an intermediate step to make the access more convenient. Because with this lintel now, it's more difficult to enter. Now, why is there? You can easily guess from engineering. You don't need deep further knowledge. I think that you might have issues of stability in this very fragile wall, because all the complex is quite fragile. Or you might have issues of invading water or soil. It is an underground structure, as we still suffer today. We can invent even more reasons, but I think we are more or less in this idea. So you can see now, and this what is let's say, my point of view, that I believe that this wall is fully original with the courtyard, at least, because it is well adjusted and well incorporated. It can be with the rest of the relief decoration of all the wall-arounds. And just have a look in the corner columns, the quarter corner columns we have in the courtyard. It's impossible to design a corner column. You don't have any reason to do that without predicting the placement for another quarter corner column to the meeting wall. So obviously, all this is well designed together. Now, of course, as we said, the actual arrangement of the gateway, it's a matter of further study. And of course, once you reach this picture that you see now, with a fully dismantled wall, it seems that it's not only collapsing, for example, that happened, but it was dismantled in purpose at a point of time. So this is where I think I'm going to continue searching further. We have seen the developments of the plan from the beginning of the research so far. Allow me now to give further ideas why I think this facade is in the right place. All Alexandria and hypogea are unique in design and in features, and perhaps also in the function. There is one basic element that is common in all of them. Once you take the stairs to go underground, you always go to the court. Otherwise, you don't need the court. The role of the court is very practical. It's to distribute people to different spaces. Then you have gatherings, rituals, whatever you want. But if you don't have this need, then why you need the court? And if I would have Brett in front of me, I would say, why should I need the court to the very end of the structure? You can have a corridor, and you can have even larger rooms if you want. So it doesn't function as the north end, as the south end, but as the south entrance. And just I give you some examples. You see totally different layouts with one basic element, stairs, courtyard, and then you distribute yourself in different areas. Another element that, for those who are familiar with space, use of space in Alexandria Hypogeia, we know that whatever is the layout, there is an axis, or more than one axis that people follow. They do love to build things upon axis. And we see that even if in the rearrangement, the placement of the gate on this wall goes straight to the very north end of the building. So it is built in the same axis, and it does follow the general idea and the general, let's say, layout, design of the structure. It's not something abnormal. I think it's totally normal. And we need now to see really what happened to the other side, because this is what we all originally believed, that the entrance was north, believing Brescia. First of all, we see that the access, as we have seen in the plan, it is not something that is normal, and I don't think that do experiments and trying to get further in architecture, you need to reinvent architecture and refound architecture. So that is not functional, so I don't think it's applicable. So what he saw, Brescia, more or less, the level that Brescia reached was this. So yes, there is one single spot with straight vertical block. See what happened in all the rest of the area that he never saw, he has never seen. The whole area has been used for the extraction, systematic extraction of stone. We saw that here. He missed the whole wall. While we know here now that we're locally, these are the remnants of locally. While in his supposed entrance, we see that we don't find a single straight line from top to bottom. Everything is cut. You see even the signs of the cuttings is all around. So was there something else there? Was another burial chamber, or maybe a second entrance, or nothing of it? And it's just a result of cutting stone. I think the last two are the strongest possibilities. And it does take further study. And yes, so I think to conclude, the south wall is the south facade wall that providing access to a very proper and archetypal, I would say, for the rest of the monumental Alexandrian tomb architecture, the archetype of what a courtyard multi-chamber tomb should be. Now, that would be, of course, let's say the main case study, part and a very important parameter for the study of the Alexandrian hypogeia is to understand their nature, their function, and also their origins. So I would like to contribute my point of view to that. And of course, we have even last night long discussions about it, and we still work on it. So I try to approach the phenomenon from a different, not different, from a different side, let's say. So it is traditional discussion since, I think, the discovery of Sadby, since the 1990, since the first 2 decades. The comparison between Alexandria and Macedon, which I think, first of all, is based in the common origin of some of the residents of Alexandria with the compatriots to the north. And to be straight, of course, the stylistic common references are more than obvious. And if I would choose one, let's say, facade in Macedon that would be something similar to our facade, would be this, because of the 6 columns arrangement. But there are great differences that we have to note beyond the style. Style is the skin, the function, the layout, the engineering, and overall the use of space as a shared, for Alexandria, a shared space between the living and the dead are the principles that we have to reconfirm in the tomb of Hypogeum A, in contrast to Macedon. So, first of all, the layout. We dismantled, we took out the style, and we see the layout. And there is no common element. Even if I cut a specific unit, like the East burial unit, and compare it to any Macedonian tomb, I can't find similarities in the layout. Even, for example, it's even the opposite. I would say. In Alexandria, usually the first chamber is the longest and the back chamber is the narrow. In Macedon, it happens to be always the same, because most probably what they had in mind was just the opposite. As a source of inspiration, what we copy. Even in tombs that look, in terms of line, similar, and we said, okay, the multi-chamber tomb of Pella, which is also late, can have some relation. And we decided in November, let's go there to see it in place. And our team, the research team, we visited last November the tomb, the multi-chamber tomb of Pella. We enjoyed the visit, but it was impossible for us to build a discussion that, you know what, this has something to do with Alexandria. So no courtyard in Pella, and no locally in Pella, because they have proper chambers that otherwise work as proper Macedonian tombs that have to be sealed. So, okay. This takes us to the use of space, which I think is the key. Already, Professor Hagak mentioned that Alexandria tombs is an open space shared between the living and the dead. And indeed, to start from the facade in Macedon keeps the living far from the dead. That's why then a tumulus will be added and will be covered. The facade in Alexandria gives access to the living towards the dead. The place is shared between the living and the dead. And if you consider that the only place, the spots in a tomb like Shadbi that have decoration is only the places where the living is and not the dead, while in Macedon you have a fully decorated tomb for the dead, exclusively for the dead. It's just the opposite. So it is a shared venue, the life continues, and the relationship is preserved beyond death, and this demands rituals. And these rituals that we cannot reconstruct that easily due to lack of evidence, nobody really recorded them, unfortunately, especially in that early age, have to do with social hierarchies, have to do with ancestors and everything that a city needs while developing to one of the greatest countries, cities in the Mediterranean, around a very powerful courtyard. So, to the idea of the last residence, in Alexandria, we should add the idea of the funerary temple, because people build, reconfirm, develop identities, hierarchies, and relationships, as the kings themselves might do if we do a rough comparison through the dynastic cult, more or less. In analogy, people and society can do the same for their own social status. Then, how can we explain the common references? We can explain it in political context, in social context, and also in cultural context. Yes, both in Macedon and in Alexandria, both in Pella and in Alexandria, you have new hierarchies that rise after the formation of the Hellenistic world. In fact, even the Macedonian kingdom is reinvented after the... Yes?
3 more minutes.
3, 2, is reinvented, okay? So, as we said, we have new hierarchies with common cultural background that they use the common Greek visual vocabulary. And I think it's a matter of funds and status to decide to build a mansion or to have just a stele imitating in a miniature form a mansion. Still, and to finish one of my 3 minutes with that, that I find that the exclusive comparison between Macedon and Alexandria at this stage of time a bit traditional. And I have seen, recently publications having this title, Alexandria and Macedon, and I don't understand why they repeat the same thing that Pangestager said 100 years ago. To me, the study of the Alexandrian hypogeia and their nature should be in the context of a much wider phenomenon that is called a Hellenistic monumental tomb architecture. And for example, we have the pleasure to have good examples in this conference. You might find even more relevant examples to places like Cyprus. If we have a whole Ptolemaic cemetery there, and the comparison can give us great insights. Lycia, Crete, Rhodes, Italy. So it's a big phenomenon, and if we need to understand how and why they do these things in the Hellenistic world, we'll have to look all around. And when I say all around, the second minute of mine, it's We have to look also to Egypt. Again, what I usually say is that the style is the skin. But nobody can say that we don't have the contribution of the Egyptian experience in engineering in creating underground tombs with locally. Here are the examples. We have animal necropolis, human necropolis, and in the place, in the nearby area of Alexandria, in the Nelson Island, we have a necropolis with locally and mummies dating to the last indigenous dynasties, or about 40 years before the arrival of Alexander the Great. So when the first Greeks with Alexander the Great arrived, they built a settlement in the same area, and they developed the same cemetery, adding a room with cleaner. In this room, Paulo Gallo discovered coins of the satrapy of Ptolemy. So take this one and put a proper architect and put it to Alexandria, further developed, and you get Shadbi. So you have a combination of ideas that sometimes are visible and sometimes are not visible, and we have to look all over that, and that's my point. So the 4 parameters of my research from now on will be what I've tried to summarize: architecture and use of space, social structures and hierarchies, and the reflection to the tomb architecture, rituals and the reflections between the worlds of the living and the dead, and also the origins and the nature, after all, of Alexandria and Hypogeia, using Hypogeum A secularly now as the archetype of this kind of monument. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Savopoulos. And now, let us proceed with the presentation of Ibrahim Al-Kholi from the Institute of Restoration of Abu Qir, titled Restoration and Preservation Program at Shadbi Cemetery.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هنتكلم عن ترميم جبانة الشاطبي الأثرية. حلول مبتكرة، وإن شاء الله بإذن الله هنعرف مع بعض إيه هي الحلول اللي قدمت في جبانة الشاطبي الأثرية كحلول مبتكرة ممكن تكون أول مرة في العالم، مش في مصر بس، تطبق في مشروع مثل جبانة الشاطبي الأثرية. الحقيقة اللي حصل مع جبانة الشاطبي الأثرية من زمن اكتشافها ما هو في هذا المشهد كلها حلول تجريبية، حلول ضارة بمادة الأثر، كأنها تجريب. والحقيقة احنا كمرممين آثار إن لم نقطع سبب التدهور لا يكون ترميم. يعني أنا قبل ما عملية الترميم تبدأ لازم أوقف خالص عوامل التدهور، عوامل التلف، وبعد كده أبدأ الصيانة العلاجية بتاعتي في الأثر. جبانة الشاطبي على اليمين طبعا بتشتكي حالها من كتر يعني التدخلات السلبية اللي يعني عبر السنين، يعني من أول بريتشيا لحد ما المشروع بدأ. هنشوف مع بعض مع حضراتكم يعني طبعا الباد بريفيوس سيتويشن والايديال سوليوشن. طبعا هم كانوا الأول مستخدمين البريكس، الطوب الأحمر، حل سلبي خالص غير متجانس مع مادة الأثر. احنا عشان نشتغل صح رحنا جلبنا الأحجار بتاعتنا من المسرح الروماني، من المخازن اللي مخزن فيها بقايا الحفائر المختلفة، وكمان حفائر كلية العلوم جامعة اسكندرية، الحفائر اللي كانت شغالة العام الماضي. الحقيقة في الصورة السفلية ديت طبعا الأسمنت البرتلاندي ممنوع استخدامه خالص في الآثار. الحقيقة استخدم في جبانة الشاطبي بشكل كبير جدا. طبعا الحل الصحيح ان هيتم ازاله البورتلاند سيمنت، ويعني نعمل عمليه احلال بالهيدروليك لايم او الجير الهيدروليك، وان شاء الله باذن الله هنعرف خواص او مميزات الجير الهيدروليك. طبعا لو اما نيجي نقوي الأثر لازم المادة يعني تتفق مع الأثر في خواصها الطبيعية، في الليونة بتاعتها، في اللدونة بتاعتها. بالظبط اللي حصل في الشاطبي كانوا بيستخدموا مواد منافية خالص لمادة الأثر، كأن بالظبط طفل حط يعني راسه ونام على حجر، من اللي هيصاب؟ طبعا الطفل وليس الحجر. فده يعني وطبعا المتانة لا تعني القوة، المتانة تعني مقاومة المادة اللي أنا استخدمتها في الترميم لعوامل التلف المختلفة. فهم استخدموا الحقيقة مواد كلها كانت يعني غير مطابقة لمادة الأثر، وده لم يقتصر علينا كمرممين محليين بس، لا يعني في البعثات المختلفة اللي جت استخدمت مواد برضك منافية لمادة الأثر. طبعا عملية الترميم عشان تتم بشكل صحيح لازم تتم بالتشخيص. إن لم يشخص حالة التلف اللي الأثر بيتعرض ليها لن ينجح الترميم. إن لم يكن هناك تشخيصا دقيقا لعملية التلف أو عملية التحلل اللي بيتعرض لها الأثر لن يكون هناك حل مثالي للأثر. بالظبط هو المرمم كطبيب، بس الطبيب مهمته صعبة شوية. يمكن الطبيب البشري المريض بيتكلم معاه بيقول له شكواه، إنما المريض في حالة الأثر المرمم بيتعامل مع مريض صامت، لازم يجعله يعني ينطق بما يعانيه من مظاهر تلف وتحلل. فعملية الترميم الناجحة هي عملية أساسها عملية التشخيص الدقيق. الحقيقة التلف أو ما تعانيه الشاطبي واللي ما حدش تنبه له خالص قبل المشروع بتاعنا ما يبدأ، الحقيقة اللي بتعاني منه المقبرة الارتفاعات الكبيرة جدا حوالين يعني جسد المقبرة، فبالتالي أول ما الأمطار هيحصل لها سقوط طبعا هتاخد كل عوامل الأتربة والرمال وتبدأ تتكاوم أو تتراكم في غرف الدفن. والحقيقة الحل ده محدش تنبه له خالص قبل كده. يعني المقبرة مكتشفة يعني بقالها حوالي 115 سنة محدش تنبه لهذه الخطورة. فطبعا الأتربة، المياه المتجمعة داخل غرف الدفن، طبعا العامل الثالث أو المظهر الثالث اللي هو التآكل بتاع الصخرة الأم، لأن طبعا المقبرة قريبة من البحر، طيارات الهواء أو طيارات الرياح، تمام، طيارات الرياح محملة برذاذ البحر، رذاذ البحر مالح بيعمل تآكل في جسم الصخرة، واللي هي أساسا زي ما هنعرف دلوقتي صخرة ضعيفة جدا زي ما عرفنا من التحاليل. الحقيقة طبعا عملية التشخيص بتتم بناء على عملية فحص وتحليل الصخر. حللنا الصخرة عرفنا ان هي طبعا حجر جيري يعني بتنتشر فيه المركبات العضوية. طبعا المادة الرابطة فيه طبعا الكالسايت او كربونات الكالسيوم، في مخلفات عضوية كتيرة فيها. الجسيمات او الحبيبات السورتنج بتاعها كويس جدا، تمام، بس التماسك بتاعها طبعا ضعيف. طبعا من مظاهر العناية الإلهية بجبانة الشاطبي، واللي لو هذه العناية لم تكن موجودة لتآكلت الصخرة تماما. الحقيقة المياه الموجودة أما جينا نقيس البي اتش بتاعتها لقيناها 7.1، يعني قريبة من التعادل. يعني الحمد لله إن هي مش حمضية، لأن لو هي حمضية كانت الصخرة تأكلت تماما. أما جينا نقيس الأملاح اللي زايبة في المية لقيناها 1.7 جرام على اللتر، وإن شاء الله هنستخدمها بعد كده في إعادة التدوير أو في ري الزرع اللي احنا زرعناه. الحقيقة كمان من العناية إن المعماري القديم أو المعماري البطلمي كان حريص جدا إن هو ينحت اللوكلي في الجزء المدمج من الصخرة الأم وليس من الجزء اللي هو الهش. والحقيقة ده اللي حافظ لنا على جبانة الشاطبي لحد دلوقتي. يعني يمكن الأسقف في معظم الغرف وقعت، يعني في سي مفيش سقف. ليه؟ لأن السقف ضعيف جدا، إنما اللوكلي متماسكة جدا، لأن الحجر الجيري عبارة عن طبقات. طبعا الطبقة اللي نحت فيها اللوكلي كانت طبقة مدمجة جدا ومتماسكة بشكل كبير، ودي اللي حافظت على جثمان الجبانة الأثرية. طبعا اول حاجه هنشيل مظاهر التلف زي ما اتفقنا مع يعني عوامل التلف زي ما اتفقنا مع حضراتكم، يبقى هنشيل الرديم ونبعده عن جسم الصخره. بدانا نزيل الرديم المتراكم عبر السنين من الجبانه الاثريه. برضك طبعا المياه بدات تظهر لنا وبدانا نتعامل معاها بشكل صح. يعني اول حاجه اشتغلنا بالطلمبات الغاطس، وبعد كده طبعا بريتشا ما تعاملش خالص بحاجه زي كده، ممكن عشان ضعف الامكانيات بتاعته. الحقيقه اما هنشتغل بماده تتفق مع الصخره. يبقى هنجيب الهيدروليكلايم، والحقيقه اول مشروع يشتغل من الاول للاخر، او من اول خطوه لاخر خطوه بالهيدروليكلايم. الجير الهيدروليك بيتميز ان هو له خواص في التصلب عاليه جدا، وكمان يعني بيتصلب حتى في ظروف الرطوبه، والحقيقه اشتغلنا بيه في المقبره ككل. قبل ما طبعا هو الهيدروليكلايم harden under water contain silicate and illuminates which harden by hydration، اللي هي بتتصلب بالتميؤ. وكمان فيه الكالسيوم هيدروكسيد اللي هو بيحصل له عمليه الكربنه ويتحول لكربونات كالسيوم مره اخرى، يعني كانه حجر جيري مره اخرى، يعني بيتصلب مع الوقت. الحقيقه قبل ما نشوف الجزء الاخير من المحاضره وهو فيديو عن الارضيه المعلقه للمقبره، انا حابب اشكر اساتذتي استاذ الدكتور حسين واستاذ الفاضله الدكتوره منى حجاج، نموذج من الاساتذه يعني مشاعل النور يعني في اللي موجوده معانا، فانا بقدم لهم جزيل الشكر. طبعا هنشاهد مع بعض فيديو عن ما تم في جبانة الشطب الأثرية كمشروع ترميم. جزيلا لحضراتكم.
Thank you very much for this great presentation. And now I'm very happy to call Basma Khalil and Mena Ala Hassan to speak on an unexpected mission, documentation of recent finds at Shahdت.
I'm going to tell you about our unexpected mission. Since the Archaeological Society of Alexandria, sponsored by A.G. Lefentis Foundation and under the concession of the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities of Egypt, began its project to completely upgrade the Shahdت cemetery. Its goals were clear and specific, including, as Dr. Mona said before, the cleaning, restoration, and conservation of the ancient remains, the consolidation of the archaeological investigation, the production of an up-to-date study, the protection of the underground structure from the invading water and soil, upgrade the visitors' experience in the site. Work planned in successive steps, beginning with the removal of the rubble, mud, and water. The removal was made in layers of 20 centimeters each until we reached the original floor of the complex at the depth of 2 meters. One important step was the removal of the modern stair which extend into the aula. It was fascinating surprise when we found the stela under the stair and fragment of Hadra vases in room G- in front of the Klini. This is the stela and the shirt of Hadra vases. So it was fascinating surprise when we found the stela under the staircase and these shirts, and here a new mission added to ours, and we started. A long journey of continuous work and surprises. It seemed simple at the beginning and amazing at the end. More than 300 pieces of artifacts were found in different parts of the site. Every single object was documented carefully by our team. In a very difficult weather condition, we used to work for more than 9 hours daily basis. And Minna will tell you some details about it.
Thank you, Basma. Thank you all for having us today. You didn't finish all that. Okay. Before reaching the original floor of the complex, artifacts began to appear floating in the mud throughout the whole site. And of course, through lapse of time, the large amount of debris left from previous excavations and accumulated all over the place. These debris also turned into mud with the rainwater penetrate inside. And of course, due to this accumulation, most of the artifacts were found intact and preserved. The archaeological investigation actually revealed more than 300 artifacts scattered in almost all burial chambers, as well as some hidden inside the surface soil. Our steps in documentation process were, first of all, of course, field observation and recording of the finds in situ, or in the site, cleaning of the objects, and restoring, of course, by the help of the team of Dr. Ibrahim. measurements, dating, and typological classification, photography as well, and at the end, creating a database for the whole artifacts. Moving to a general overview on the discoveries, starting with the northern east burial chamber, room C by Preccia, according to Preccia, where 90% of the recent finds were discovered in its locally and its soil of its west and north sides as well, including utensils of pottery for domestic use in good condition, almost intact pieces. We have hydriae, this is room C. We have hydriae, we have actually 2 hydriae in the northern eastern locally of room C, maintaining parts of their surface decoration. Both are almost intact, but missing the bases and keep their burned bones inside. One hydria has the usual decorative motifs known for hadra vases or hadra hydriae, and the other is different in color. Maybe it's a local clay, maybe it's anything but non-motive, and maintained remnant of white coating. You can see here. We used in photography infrared technique that done by Mr. Alan Gwimmer, which revealed traces of Egyptian blue on its surface, especially on the one on your right side. Moving to the liquid vases or vessels, we have 25 unguteria, mainly red and yellow clay, intact with some missing parts from the rim, body, and base. We have also 29 jars. We have also 29 jars. The majority are red and white clay with a handle that extends from the neck to the shoulder at one of its sides. They are almost intact with some scratches on its surface. Some kept their traces of their decoration. We have also tableware. We have a collection of 52 bowls and dishes, mainly red clay. Some are intact and others have missing parts. Oil lamps as well. We have a collection of 32 lamps, mainly red clay, wheel-made, almost intact with some missing parts as well. Moving to the East Burial Unit, the main chamber. The East Burial Unit, which consists of 2 burial chambers, room G and G dash, according to Preccia. During the investigation inside the inner room or the clini chamber, in front of the narrow wall of the clini, we found fragments of hadra vases that were covered, hidden under the mud on the floor. Perhaps they may seem to have been fallen from the niches at that clini chamber. This is the niches. And this is the fragments of hadra vases, one of them. And this is Dr. Ibrahim restoring these puzzles of hadra vases to give us the perfect result for the 2 hadra vases here. Also, the main court or the auli also gave us a special gift, which is an inscribed miniature altar was discovered during the investigation in the aula in front of the West Chamber. We have the North Passage as well, or Room D, according to Preccia, in which a group of human teeth was found. The Northwest Burial Chamber, Room H, in which 2 complete human skeletons and a broken skull were found in the chambers locally. This is the skull. Then heading to Philotechnos Hall or Room H by Preccia, skeletal remains of most probably a couple located in one of the loculi. And not just discovering artifacts inside the chambers, but also inside the surface of the rubble. A group of stamped amphora handles were found as well in the rubble. So before creating a database, we had to do some measurements and classification to the founds, as well as photography in situ. Actually, we started the database inside the Shotby. Here in our small set, our small location, in situ with our dear Professor Kyriakos Safopoulos, making a photo session for each artifact for a proper database. Also, we finished the artifacts. We headed to making photo session also for the whole site, the whole chambers, each part and each chamber as well. Ending with the creation of the database for nearly 200 hours to finish it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation and also for the amazing work you have been contributing to this Shotby project. And now to end this session, Athanasios Koutoupas from Cyprus Institute on digital documentation and visualization of the Shotby necropolis in Alexandria.
Thank you, Professor Plazos. So, without further delay, in the next few minutes, I will try to present to you, as the title mentions, the work has been conducted by the APAC labs of the Cyprus Institute for the digital documentation and the visualization of the Shotby necropolis. The aim of the documentation as part of the project was to create an accurate 3D and 2D documentation of the site, to provide virtual access to inaccessible locations, to create an interactive virtual tour, and to document the state of preservation of the site and the effects of climate change and the surrounding environment. For the purpose of the documentation, we used the Faro 350S laser scanner and a Canon EOS 8D camera with all the necessary configurations for the inside and outside spaces of the site. And here I would like to express my thanks to the colleagues from the Ain Sans University for the collaboration in using the laser scanner, and the colleagues from the Archaeological Society of Alexandria for their valuable help during the 2 fieldworks we have conducted during July 2022 and January 2023. Concerning now the laser scanning of the site, in total, 247 scans were registered, and in this slide you can see all the scan locations marked in black. The purpose was to collect data from every point of the site in order not to miss each, not even a corner. In this slide, you can see an example, and this is a reconstruction of the digital model of the scans from the upper level, where the white spheres represents the scan locations. So as you see, scans were taken from each and every corner in order to duplicate the places and to have all the necessary informations. These renders are from the Autodesk recap. The process involves importing the raw laser scans and aligning them in the software. Then the scans were cleaned from any disturbing elements. The resulting point cloud was then exported in E57 file format and imported in the reality capture to be aligned with the photogrammetry data. The photogrammetry and the laser scan data were aligned together and viewed as sparse point cloud. 4,473 photos were edited in the Lightroom software and then aligned in the reality capture. Subsequently, they were merged with the imported scans, then merged, unwrapped, and textured. The sparse point cloud was meshed in high details, producing a mesh with more than 1 billion faces. It was textured using adaptive texture quality between 4 times optimal or 25% of the texture quality to optimal, which represents 100% of the texture quality. In order to facilitate the dissemination of the model with the best possible texture, a simplified low-poly model was created with 25 million faces, and the optimal texture from the high-poly model was projected on the low-poly model, which also included a displacement map. Therefore, an accurate digital model was created which enables the person who will use it to see exactly what the visitor of the site can see, and in some cases, even elements that the actual visitor cannot see completely. The model enables to be presented digitally human remains, color remains, as well as remains of wall paintings, and in this case, you can see, I don't know if it's clear, in the middle of the photo in the clean, some remainings of the wall paintings. In addition, it provides the possibility to present elements of the site which today's layout are not accessible in their entirety, as was this wall that also Professor Kyriakos showed, and this will give also the opportunity to the researchers to further examine what is happening with the site and to offer possible solutions for the entrance. Furthermore, from the model, we can extract sections, the 2D plan of the site, as well as to make comparison with its today's state during the first excavation. For the time being, and following the completion of the necessary configurations, the digital model will be uploaded to the Cyprus Institute's digital platform. Through the platform, and after consultation with the Archaeological Society of Alexandria, both the general public, but also researchers, will be given the possibility to digitally visit the site, but also to carry out measurements, which may contribute to the comparative study of the site with other similars from the same era. Additionally, and for dissemination purposes, a bird's eye view video and a virtual tour are prepared, offering to the digital visitor the full experience of the site. The virtual tour could be also complemented in the future with photographic and information material from the in-situ discoveries. And here you can see a preliminary video and what a visitor could be able to see with all the remainings that were digitally documented there. Closing this short presentation, I would like also to refer to the initiatives taken in recent years at the European level and in which the Mediterranean countries also participate regarding the effect of the climate change and other environmental conditions on archaeological sites. The documentation of the Sadvi necropolis enables it to form part of such projects as a case study, thus to be further protected and preserved, but also to become a point of interest for Alexandria, which the Hellenistic necropolis of Sadvi deserves. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation, which concludes the presentations for the first session. We're running dreadfully out of time, before we continue with the questions, with the Q&A session, I would like to announce that obviously the next session will start half an hour late, so we'll start at 1:30. However, for the moment, can I ask for a briefer than usual Q&A session with questions for all our speakers this morning, since obviously all the presentations were about Shadbi, the excavation, the restoration of the site. So any questions for any of our, yes? There is the mic going around.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Mona, one question for you. What is the earliest date which you proposed for the Shadbi necropolis?
I think a few minutes from now, Nicholas Imani will speak about dating the pottery of Shadbi, and I think his talk will be very more accurate than mine, but we have some inscriptions that can be, I mean, from the epigraphic point of view, can be late, very late fourth, early third.
That it means the same date like the Bobastion.
Yes.
Late fourth, early third.
Somehow, yes.
It's the same. Okay, thank you.
Of course, with the different functions, of course.
Yes, of course,
yes.
of course.
Yes.
For Mr. Kyriakos, I have another question for him because I don't know he's here.
Yes.
Ready, Doctor.
Hello. You mentioned the Egyptian influences on the Shadbi. And you know that, of course, that Dashevsky mentioned it for the substructure of the architectural monuments of the tombs before. He related Shadbi with the Egyptian tombs, especially in the late period. And in the same way, at the Bobastion again, with a different function, we have also the Egyptian influences appeared in the religious affair, and the connection between the Greeks and the Egyptians in the early period of the foundation of the city. And you mentioned especially you took as example the Nelson Island. It is the same phenomena that the Greeks who lived in Egypt and settled in Egypt before the foundation of the city, they came and abandoned the Canopus according to the degree of the instruction of Cleomenes, and they came and settled in Alexandria. And of course, they influenced not only the sanctuaries, but also the other buildings, other funerary buildings like in Shadbi. That it means your discovery is confirmed what happened also in the Bobastion, and that what I wanted to influence or to illustrate it here or demonstrate it here clearly. For Alexandria, you have to put it in your mind that's Egypt, or the Greeks settled in Egypt before in Naucratis, in Canopus. Both of them, they came and they were part of the population of Alexandria at the early period. Thank you.
The question?
Thank you.
Comment. It's only comment for
Okay,
your...
to comment over. Okay.
Comment of your...
We all agree with Kyriakos. Bob Bianchi.
Sorry, can I give the comment?
Yes.
So,
But we're running, yeah, okay.
definitely. We fully agree, we are on the same page. Only a note, I have started using less and less the term influence. And I turn into contribution. Because I think influence also underestimates, in a way, what happens to Alexandria in real time. So that different elements contribute in the formation in what would be Alexandria in architecture or in arts or in life. Everything is a reflection of life, after all, right? Plus, I have started looking better to the content and not to the form only. So sometimes the two traditions can really complete each other in many ways. So comparing, for example, civic architecture or civic art with funerary architecture and funerary art, you see, for example, In civic architecture, you have more obvious Greek forms. And in the funerary architecture, in the course of time, in Anfusi, for example, or later in the Roman period, the Egyptian form gets stronger compared to the Greek one. So we have to see also how the content, how the dress is applied to something. A Greek dress can be applied in something that is in skin or in body original, or the opposite. I think they do that in Alexandria. Serapeon, to me, is the best example. So Serapeon is the ultimate, to me, as far as we know from the evidence, of the experiment of how we transliterate forms and contents in order to achieve what we need for our life. So that is, and sometimes the terms Greek, Egyptian, or anything else in the course of time get tricky. They don't mean the same anymore, and they don't mean the same especially in this city, right? So this is what I think. Anfusi, for example, such an Egyptian in style tomb, you find Greek names. Something happens in the society after 300 years of people living together that we cannot ignore, and we have to, at a point, to set up all scholars to contribute from their case studies, principles for this coexistence and interaction. We can do it, I think, now. We have enough material. Thank you.
Yes.
Just on that point that Mervat has just made and Kyriakos has described, the Shatby shows us from the architectural design of the aule, or the court, that it is a performance area, what Marjorie Bennett has called theater of the dead. And Kyriakos has also shown us this morning that the Macedonian proper tombs, Philip, Vergina, are closed, locked spaces that prevent the living from interacting. The suggestion has been made that the court in Shatby and the performance area in Mustafa Kemal have as their possible architectural origin the so-called Lichthof, the light courts of the tombs of the Asasif in Thebes that are dated to Dynasty 25 and Dynasty 26. Now, the real problem is when we look at Egyptian pharaonic architecture, the design of the late period tombs in the Asasif stop because the tombs of the Persian period are shaft tombs way down in the ground that are inaccessible. So the difficulty is we have to try to connect the dots between how, if knowledge of the Dynasty 25, 26 tombs reached the architects of the early Ptolemaic period. Okay. But this raises an interesting question about influence and transmission. And I have long argued that we do not have a written record of the dialogue between pharaonic Egyptian people working in the arts and Ptolemaic people working in the arts. But I am positive that Greek architects and Egyptian architects are talking together if you believe the aule in Shatby is related to a pharaonic tomb. The intellects were talking together because we have Manetho writing in Greek, and more importantly, it is impossible to understand how granite is being incorporated into the Pharaoh's lighthouse if Greek engineers and architects were not talking to pharaonic Egyptian architects and engineers, because they're working in different stone on a monumental scale. So I think that the cumulative evidence now suggests that we abandon this outmoded theory of a mixed style or a hybrid style, because I think that that clouds the picture. I think it is more important and more appropriate if we talk about theories of entanglement, where entanglement is an equation. Pharaonic plus Hellenistic equals something brand new, novel, and innovative that does not exist in either culture and can only exist if the cultures are commingling on an intellectual level with one another. And so I think it's worth exploring how those interconnections were made. We have evidence that this dialogue must have happened, but now we need evidence to try to explain how that dialogue happened to take place. And I think the work at Shotby is fundamental in trying to bridge that gap. As I thank you all very much for your contribution to what's happening with Shotby and how that impacts upon our greater understanding of the nature of Hellenistic Ptolemaic culture.
And with this intervention by Bob Bianchi, I think it's time to close the Q&A session, because I was asked to keep it at 10 minutes, so this is what I'm going to do. So we're all meeting back here at 1:30 for the next session. I think coffee is being served outside. Thank you all.